Everybody, welcome back to Bayou Time. Harry McCulla here. We've got a nice guest, a special guest. It's Congressman Garret Graves. He's from the 6th Congressional District. That's, of course, most of Thibodaux, some northern Terrebonne, all the way up to, I guess, Hammond and all that area. Garret, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. I know you're busy. They got all kind of things going on in Washington, always, it's always the case. Let's talk a little bit about, I guess right now, the infrastructure bill is a big deal. I've seen you on the internet recently and a couple of hearings talking about the amount of money we spend on different things. You were talking $7 trillion now, when a couple of years back we were freaking out about $800 million when it was Obama and Biden as the vice president doing a stimulus bill then. And we're up to $7 trillion now. We're all for infrastructure, but I did hear in your voice that there was some, maybe the price tag is a little too much. But just first of all, your thoughts on the infrastructure bill.
Hey, look, when you run out of monopoly money, you've got to start pulling every alarm you can and recognize that things are completely out of hand. We have been trying to talk to this administration, Speaker Pelosi, about the financial irresponsibility we're seeing coming out of Washington. $1.9 trillion in stimulus spending earlier this year, now proposing $3.5 trillion in social welfare expansion programs, then an additional $1.2 trillion in infrastructure. And just to remind folks, back during the Obama administration, they were talking about a fraction of that, talking about numbers around $305 billion as their infrastructure package, and called that one historic. In this case, they're talking about quadrupling dollars. Nearly all of this would be deficit spending. And in the same legislation, they're trying to wrap all this together. They're attempting to raise this nation's debt limit up to $45 trillion. 45 with a T, trillion dollars. Completely irresponsible spending. They're going to cause skyrocketing inflation and absolutely mortgage the future of our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and beyond.
There's no doubt, and I also heard you saying, you talk about inflation, you're talking about some of those things will have an inverse effect on like our energy, which is one of our biggest issues around this area. There's a lot of things that go into that. We're all for infrastructure. Look, we need bridges, we also need levees, we need flood protection, so we're all for that kind of infrastructure, but at these numbers and I guess some of the other things, some of the amendments, I guess there was like 230 amendments that were thrown in there too. I guess that's all your concern.
It absolutely is our concern. Look, let's be clear, Harry. We need infrastructure. We know that. We need infrastructure. We need roads and bridges. We need to address some of our traffic problems, flood protection, hurricane protection projects, restoring our coast, broadband, airports and ports and waterways. All of these things are critical to us in South Louisiana, to our economy, to our job opportunities, to our way of life. Look, our future in South Louisiana is in jeopardy without some of these critical infrastructure investments. But to come out there and to add billions of dollars in things like electric vehicle charging stations, diverting some of this money to Green New Deal type priorities, and I remind you that it is this administration that when we gave them money to fund road and bridge projects across the country, they said that their priorities were going to be environmental justice, racial equity, and climate change under a transportation grant program. I don't even know how you do that. Let's focus on fixing problems and making sure that we're spending these limited taxpayer dollars on real solutions. I don't even know how you fix some of these other issues with a road project. And so they're really politically manipulating some of the funds we're giving them. So it gives me huge pause to want to come in and quadruple the amount of money that we're giving to them.
Right, and it's not like we're coming out of COVID, which is, I guess, where we want to swerve here for the last 2 minutes. The FDA did approve Pfizer's vaccine, but it does look like things are going to fall out from that. It looks like even LSU is going to require vaccines for LSU football games, those kind of things. What's your thoughts on having at least now finally approved by the FDA? But let me have your thoughts on that.
Oh, look, first, I think it's helpful that the FDA has gone in and completed their analysis. You got to keep in mind, Harry, that normally it takes 4 to 5 years to go through and create and to approve a vaccine. In this case, under some of the efforts by President Trump last year, we were able to do it in effectively 1 year's time, which was remarkable, giving that option to folks that wanted to get vaccinated. In this case, I think giving more confidence, more security to those people that are concerned about the efficacy of the virus, about the efficacy of the vaccine, the safety of the vaccine. And so I think that it's very helpful that this step has been taken. But also, Harry, as you noted, really concerning that now we're talking about booster shots and additional variants of the virus that potentially this is going to be an ongoing thing, not for months, but potentially even longer. I believe Dr. Fauci recently said that as late as October of next year. So this is especially concerning that we're seeing this goal line continue to be moved. They said repeatedly that this was going to be done, that this virus would be over, the pandemic over, by early this year.
Yeah, no doubt. But your thoughts on, going into a stadium or going into a restaurant, is that something we have to do in about 30 seconds?
I don't think it's appropriate to have government to force people to inject something in their body. That certainly gives me pause. I think it's great that the vaccine's gone through the final approval process, again, giving people more confidence, but I don't think it's the government's role to come in and force someone to inject something in their body. If the people choose not to do it, they have to have other mitigating factors that they need to adopt.
Let's talk about our coast for a little bit. And it looks like with all of this infrastructure bill and a lot of stuff that's going on, the Corps of Engineers may be involved with the Biden administration, and some of our flood protections may be at risk here.
We saw this defund the police debacle play out, and now we're seeing efforts out of the Biden administration to defund Corps of Engineer projects. Get this, Harry, that could cause the cost of natural gas and gasoline prices to be lower. And so, we start reading like, what are you talking about? So we start talking to different folks, and they said, look, if you have a flood control project, a coastal restoration project, a hurricane protection project, that could include any type of oil and gas infrastructure, gas station, pipeline, refinery, then this project could be defunded because it could reduce the cost of consumption of gasoline at the pump or of natural gas prices to heat, cool our home or cook. This is crazy. And so what this is doing once again, Harry, is this is putting a preference in place for foreign energy, for energy from Russia and other places. And you say, oh, they're making that up. Let me give you a quick statistic. In May and June of last year, we imported 0 barrels of oil from Russia. In May and June of this year, 6 million barrels and 7 million barrels of oil from Russia, respectively, while they're telling Americans, Louisianians, you have to stop producing energy.
Right. The leases in the Gulf of Mexico is a classic example, and people are worried. People don't do business just by week to week, and it's really put a damper on what's going on in our economy for sure. But yeah, let's talk about that. How are we going to get to the point where we can start our own oil production, natural gas, that kind of stuff, and we don't start sending money to Russia, the Middle East, which is going to be a lot more dangerous coming up even now, Venezuela, those kind of areas. It's more important, I would think, to drill or to do things around our area.
Well, obviously from an economic security, energy security, national security perspective, it makes a heck of a lot more sense to be producing energy here versus what the Biden administration was just doing 2 weeks ago, where they were urging countries like Iran, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and others to increase production of oil because they were worried about global oil supplies and prices. This is crazy. In the same breath, to be telling Louisianians you have to shut down production or you can't produce some of these areas in the Gulf of Mexico, and telling Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and other countries that certainly in many cases are not our friends, don't share our values. We want to buy more of your oil and gasoline. You can't make this stuff up. These are failed energy policies. And unfortunately, just like we've seen with a lack of forethought into the debacle in Afghanistan, this similar approach is playing out in other areas where they're acting on emotion and not thinking through an execution strategy or how you would actually thoughtfully go through and move America in a cleaner energy direction makes no sense at all. And as a matter of fact, some of the cleanest energy in the world, in terms of conventional fuels are what we produce in the Gulf of Mexico, and that's what they're trying to shut down.
Yeah, without a doubt, it is disturbing. And look, you brought up Afghanistan, and I guess you see Russia and you see China right there. Now we'll have a direct loop into Afghanistan, who has a bunch of rare minerals as well. But then you go Afghanistan right into Iran, right into Syria, right into Lebanon. It seems like they have a pipeline right into that area that now Americans won't be there, and it's not a local interest, but we did have local men that fought in that war. Just your thoughts on what's happening in Afghanistan, and it looks like the Taliban wants us to stay serious to that August 31st deadline.
I think it's going to go down as one of the worst blunders in American foreign policy history. What you're seeing now, I just had a classified briefing this morning with the Secretary of State, with the Secretary of Defense, the Director of National Intelligence, and as well as other officials within the intelligence and diplomat community. It is. I walked out of that briefing actually more concerned than I walked in, Harry. It is crystal clear. There's no plan. There's no vision. We actually have more troops in Afghanistan today than we did before the withdrawal. Explain how that works. And one of the other huge concerns is all of these Americans and folks that helped America that are stuck there, truly stuck, no clear plan by our military to get them out. And then the fact that you have more Black Hawk helicopters that we've effectively turned over to the Taliban than we have in all of Australia, Apache helicopters, drones, MRAPs, Humvees, we've just given it to them. Complete debacle.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they didn't win Kabul. They were just surrendered to them, And the same thing with the rest of the country. Obviously, is the Afghans just abandoned their posts, and that's how the Taliban and whoever else is there. But yeah, it is disturbing for sure. And if everybody's supposed to make it to the Kabul airport, what about folks that don't live in Kabul? They live in Kandahar or some other place. They're kind of in trouble, I guess.
And we've asked them that there are at least 4 other airfields that the United States can open up, providing that those other options for those people that are trapped in Afghanistan, Americans that we need to get back. And so far, they've refused to open those other facilities. You've seen the British and others that are clearly sending out teams and rescuing their citizens in other parts of the country. And U.S. has resisted those efforts thus far to do it. Lastly, by us turning over this equipment to the Taliban, we've effectively made them a greater security threat than they were before. And now they're attempting to dictate terms to us, like this August 31st deadline. Completely unacceptable.
Garret Graves, we sure appreciate your time. Thanks so much for representing us and for joining us here on HTV.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, we'll be back with more Bayou Time after this.